Welcome to this week's Rabbit Holes about the baby history related stories I have found during the week but don't have time for a full project on yet. Links to all the sources will be in the doobly-doo. In archaeology news, archaeologists in Poland have been excavating the town square of Bochnia, and I'm probably going to murder all of the Polish names. I apologize. They've discovered a second human skull, which is putting more weight behind the theory that they've discovered the location where, in 1679, 3 women accused of being baby-eating witches were burned at the stake: Regina Orzbicka and her 2 teachers, Marina Mazurkawa and Borucina. I'm going to have their names on the screen, so if it is that particular execution, then they should be able to find the 3rd skull. It was the custom that anyone who was executed for being a criminal was buried at the site of their execution, and the bones are found in an anatomical arrangement, so they were intentionally interred there, whatever their identity in life. Annette Station, who studied the case of the accused witches, explains, they were accused of infanticide. Burned under torture, Orzbicka admitted that she had bought a baby from a man in order to fake her motherhood, thus force Bartosz Ogranic, with whom she was in love, to marry. Orzbicka's further testimony showed that the gardener, on Borucina's order, killed the baby, and she had ripped out the veins that served her as an ingredient in the preparation of magical ointments. Marzukawa, on the other hand, confessed that they burned the child's body into powder, then, on Borucina's order, she and Orzbicka had to drink its decoction. Of course, further testing needs to be done on the finds, such as dating the bones and analyzing the ash, etc., before they can conclusively say that the remains are from these victims of the European witch craze. Next is an article from the New York Times about surrogacy in China. Recently, a popular Chinese actress was accused by her boyfriend of abandoning 2 babies they had had through a surrogate in the United States, leaving him stuck in the US to care for them alone. As the drama unfolded in the public sphere, private audio messages between the couple were leaked. One was allegedly of her complaining to her boyfriend that the surrogate pregnancy was a few months along and couldn't be terminated. So this story is like kicking a wasp nest at the crotch of Chinese politics surrounding women's reproductive rights. Surrogacy and egg freezing are prohibited in China. However, wealthy people can travel out of the country to access either, and frequently do. One of the reasons given by the Chinese government for banning surrogacy is the concern that with a surrogate pregnancy, the parents-to-be will be more likely to change their mind and seek an abortion, which looks to be the case with this actress, or that they will abandon babies they either decided they don't want anymore or aren't happy with due to their looks, their sex, medical problems, disability, etc. And or that surrogacy will lead to the exploitation of poor women. And then there is the legacy of the one-child policy, which led to the massive sex ratio discrepancy in China today. Female babies were killed or left to die in order for families to try again for a boy. In the 1990s, China had to ban abortions on the basis of the fetus's sex. And that is another concern they have about allowing surrogacy, that surrogates will be pressured or forced into abortions based on the baby's sex, and egg fertilization and freezing, because sperm can be sexed before fertilization. Women's rights groups want the government to get out of controlling women's bodies, full stop. And in other parts of the world, the issue of women's rights and surrogacy can become a really sticky issue. In my opinion, women should be able to offer their services as a surrogate. However, there needs to be some regulation to prevent exploitation, where corporations are acting as pregnancy pimps. They collect poor women, keep them in terrible conditions, effectively as breeding stock, and then pay them, if they are paid at all, a pittance compared to what the owners of the institution are paid by to-be parents. It's a radio from the future, or a day after I recorded this. Another news story on surrogacy from the US and Michigan came up in my recommended reading. This involves a family, the Myers, who are fighting with the courts for their parental rights to their twins who were born by a gestational carrier. The gestational carrier provided the service without payment as a gift to the couple, and paying for a gestational carrier in Michigan is a felony, which is why they're dealing with this whole hassle. So while judges in other counties in the states granted pre-birth orders allowing the biological parents to have themselves listed on a baby's birth certificate immediately after birth, the Myers are being forced to go through a formal adoption of their own biological children. The twins are in the NICU at the moment, but the Myers need to be listed as the parents on the birth certificates as soon as possible so they can get the twins on the family's health insurance. Why is paying for a gestational carrier a felony in Michigan? Why is this family being put through this?
Michigan today became the first state to outlaw paying a woman a profit to be a surrogate mother.
The laws were put down by many, if not most states, against surrogacy in the late 1980s, after the publicity around the Baby M case made the news. So this whole case was between two families, the Stearns and the Whiteheads. So the Stearns hired Mary Beth Whitehead as a surrogate, meaning her egg was fertilized by William Stearns' sperm, making her a biological parent of the pregnancy. With their contract, they agreed to the surrogacy terms and that she would relinquish her parental rights after the birth in exchange for $10,000 plus her expenses. And so on March 27, 1986, Whitehead gave birth to a baby girl that she named Sarah Elizabeth Whitehead on the birth certificate. She had decided that she wanted to keep this baby. But a few days after, the baby was given to the Stearns, who then paid Whitehead for her services and then named her Melissa Stearn. After a few more days passed, Whitehead contacted the Stearns demanding that they give the baby back, threatening to kill herself. And then not long after that, Whitehead and her husband kidnapped the baby and fled the state with her. It was international news. Lawsuits went flying about who are the real parents and the contract, is that even legal? And Baby M was placed in foster care for a time. The whole issue, all of the concerns I've mentioned here, for example, the wealth inequality, Whitehead and her husband were extremely poor. He wasn't employed due to an accident. I don't think she was employed either. They were both high school dropouts and they had older children to care for. And they had only taken on the surrogacy out of financial distress, while the Stearns were wealthy doctors. So there's a lot of class issues brought into this, and people were taking sides, and it was ugly. And so to avoid the entire issue, many states just wrote blanket bans on the practice of gestational carriers or surrogacy rather than consider the nuances. What are your thoughts on this issue? Do you have any experience as or with a surrogate? On to an article from The Guardian about falling birth rates all across the industrialized world and the new form of rewilding taking place in the resulting ghost towns. They begin by noting the 1968 book, The Population Bomb, by two Stanford biologists, Paul and Ann Ehrlich, and their predictions of mass starvation. At the time the Ehrlichs were publishing their dark prophecies, the world was at its peak of population growth, which at that point was increasing at a rate of 2.1% a year. Since then, the global population has ballooned from 3.5 billion to 7.67 billion. Since then, birth rates have fallen considerably thanks to the increasing access to safe and effective contraception. In fact, many countries are dealing with negative population growth. In the previous episode of Rabbit Holes, I talked about Melissa Kearney's prediction that we will see a post-pandemic baby bust due to economic concerns. Population aging is a result of the median age of a population rising as fewer people are born into subsequent generations. Social safety net programs and healthcare infrastructure become strained when there are so many people that need help due to age, but there are so few young people to fulfill the coffers and or the caretaking jobs. It can also create concerns for national security. There's obviously the military, which tends to recruit from the demographics with high birth rates and low resources. But there's also the issue of relying on other nations for food, for example, if there aren't enough people in a nation to produce enough food to feed the population. So some countries are trying to incentivize baby In South Korea last year, the birth rates fell to 0.84 per woman, a record low despite extensive government efforts to promote childbearing. From next year, cash bonuses of 2 million won will be paid to every couple expecting a child, on top of existing child benefit payments. Which, if someone is deciding to have a baby simply for benefits, that ain't right. What's your life worth? Oh, 2 million won plus existing child benefits. A reduced population is not a wholly negative thing. The younger generations will face less competition for resources, whether food and clean water or housing and education. And obviously, animals get to play in our ghost towns. But we need to balance those potential benefits with ensuring a good quality of life for all generations, including the people who were being born when the Ehrlichs published their book. Speaking of books, we're on to book recommendations. The first I found in the New York Times. Side note here, if you want to read paywall articles on the New York Times but cannot afford a subscription, check out your local public library's online resources. This is how I access the New York Times, including their archives and the Times Machine, for free, while still supporting New York Times journalism and my local public library. All right, so the book is called American Baby, A Mother, a Child, and the Shadow History of Adoption by Gabrielle Glaser. And I hope I'm saying your name right. It's about the baby scoop era between 1950 and 1975 when adoption skyrocketed. She tells us the story of Margaret Earl Katz and her son David Rosenberg as an example of all the hushed up, sealed adoptions of the era. Margaret became pregnant at 16 years old with her teenage boyfriend. They wanted to keep their baby and get married as soon as they were old enough. But like so many young women of the time, she was sent to a maternity home, see episode 1, for more of those. Margaret, against her will, is restrained during birth and put into twilight sleep, and upon waking was told that she didn't get to hold or see her baby. For months, the young birth parents insisted that they would keep their child, who had been placed immediately in foster care. Finally, when a social worker threatened to have Margaret sent to juvenile hall, she signed the relinquishment forms without reading them. Glaser describes in powerful detail how both David's first and second mothers were told what they wanted to hear about each other and about the baby they shared. People had always had sex before marriage, Glaser writes, but after the war, something of a social calculus shifted. The mix of soldiers returning with sexual experience plus larger suburban homes in which the teenagers could have more privacy, combined with the rise of automobile culture and the availability of backseat of the family Buick, all at a time when birth control, sex education, and abortion were taboo, led to out-of-wedlock births to more than triple between 1940 and 1966. The article goes on to describe the unethical and at times amoral acts of the adoption agencies and the social services in the U.S. Jewish children being taken from Jewish families to be raised by Christians, twins and triplets being intentionally divided into different families so nature versus nurture could be studied, and babies being bounced around foster placements until it could be determined if they were of mixed race. And one adoption agency allowed researchers to shoot rubber bands at newborns' feet to see if pain reaction could be linked to intelligence. Was all of the above a result of ignorance? Defenders of this system have argued that knowledge of genetics and infant development back then was rudimentary, and that these choices were made with the best intentions. Glaser, however, is persuasive in her argument that the actions at best ignored inconvenient evidence and at worst acted in spite of it. For instance, as David idled in foster care, there were existing studies proving the importance of attachment and the harm of moving an infant from one foster mother to the next. Towards the end of the 1970s, access to contraception and abortion prevented or ended a large proportion of unintended pregnancies, while advancement in medicine helped couples struggling with infertility conceive, thereby lowering the rates of adoption. At the same time, adoption rights advocates were getting laws changed all across the nation to allow adopted individuals to access their birth certificates, which is an issue causing contention right now in the aftermath of the Mother and Baby Homes Commission in Ireland. So American Baby is out for sale now, both ebook and hardcover. The next book on my list is Outlawed, a novel about a midwife in the American Old West. I discovered it via an article by the author, Anna North, in The Guardian. She writes about how her birth experience changed her perspective on her historical research into birth and baby care. Much of this information was fascinating to me, and some of it was disturbing, but none of it affected me emotionally. Informed by my research, I wrote about women enduring days-long labors, bloody episiotomies, and even death in childbirth. While I tried to approach these sections of the book with empathy, I didn't lose sleep over them. I wrote about them in the way that I wrote about any experience that hadn't happened to me, with investment, without identification. Then I had a baby. Her article touches on some of the specifics she learned in researching her novel, and then after finishing the book, her anger at the problems in reproductive health care as it exists today, noting how many women are treated as vessels during pregnancy, even by their doctors, and her belief that women experiencing infertility are perceived as broken, and women choosing to be child-free are being viewed as selfish. I covered reproductive health for years as a journalist before I had my son, so I knew about all of these attitudes, but I felt them in a deeper way when I became visibly pregnant and saw how often my identity was erased or placed second to that of the fetus I was carrying. Her ending comments are about imagining a world where everyone is given the reproductive care they deserve, where the caregiver cares just as much about the person as they do about the babies they can or can't or don't want to produce. Her book will be coming out on January 28th, which should be yesterday, assuming this video gets out on Friday. All right, last one, and I had a bunch more, but this is going long, so a few weren't going to make the list. Okay, so the last one is on the cultural/current history side of things. And what do I mean by that? History never ends. We are living history right now. Not just the big crazy things that are occurring, but our daily lives will be historical. And right now, a lot of us spend our daily lives involved with social media platforms. At their heart, social media as we know it is a business model that commodifies behavior manipulation using data mining to fuel algorithms. For example, if you'll buy more stuff when you're depressed, by golly, your experience of social media will be tuned to that end. It's pretty dodgy stuff. So let's throw motherhood into that mix. Yeah. Not supporting that. Anyway, and this is what Under the Influence with Joe Piazza from the iHeartRadio network is going to be about. In Vanity Fair, they wrote, as a journalist and mom of two, Joe Piazza is determined to peel back the crisp, artisanal curtain obscuring the multi-billion-dollar industry behind the mom internet. That perfectly curated corner of social media where wine glasses never spill, diapers never leak, and a barrel curl is never out of place. With Under the Influence, Piazza will delve into the rise of influencer marketing and the commodification of motherhood, an online evolution she views as driving normal mothers to the brink. That podcast is supposed to drop on February 4th, and I am looking forward to checking it out. Alrighty, that's all for this episode. Links will be in the doobly-doo. If you enjoyed, please like, and to see more, subscribe. And if you want to help support my research, you can find me on Find the Baby Historian on Patreon. Links are below. Thank you for watching.